Well, I want to thank you for joining me today. As you know, we've been on the prophetic theme recently, and we're unlocking some prophetic mysteries, some scriptures that may have unusually strange applications when you look at them and you're trying to figure out when did this happen or how could this happen. And one of those deals with the numbers that are found in the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel is an intriguing apocalyptic book. It's not all apocalyptic, but a lot of it is. It deals with visions and dreams by the prophet Daniel and special dreams that occurred with King Nebuchadnezzar, who at that time, in the time of Daniel, was the king of Babylon. Daniel saw the time of the end, especially in chapters 11 and 12, also portions of chapter 7 and chapter 8. And we won't have time to get into the symbolism because that's not what we're talking about. We're going to talk about the strange numbers that are alluded to in the book of Daniel. In Daniel chapter 8 and verse 14, he mentions 2,300 days. In Daniel 12:11, he mentions 1,290 days. By the way, that same number is alluded to twice in the book of Revelation. Daniel 12 and 12, he has a verse that says this, 1,335 days. Now, throughout history, some scholars have taken those days and turned them into years, and they base that on the idea of the children of Israel searched out the promised land for 40 days. And because of their unbelief, God punished them and would not let them come into the promised land for 40 years. And he gave them a judgment of 1 year of wandering for every day of unbelief. And this is why some scholars will take all of these biblical numbers and try to apply them to years in history, especially from the time of the birth of Christ or the crucifixion, and see if they add up to something. Well, here's a verse that I want to give you. It says, blessed is he, this is Daniel 12 and 12, blessed is he that waits and comes to the 1,305 and 30 days. Now that's the King James way of saying it. Or blessed is he that comes to the 1,335 days. Now, if we use what some scholars do and we turn that into years, what could that allude to? That you're blessed if you come to the 1,335 years. Well, the old calendars, as many of you know, were 360 days making a year. The Gregorian calendar makes 365.25 days a year. And the Islamic calendar, which began in 622, makes 354 days a year. From the 6th century to the 19th century, the Muslims in the Middle East would battle off and on for the area that was then known as the land of Palestine. And of course, that's where the Crusades came in, and there was a battle between what was called the Crusaders, the Crusader armies, and the Islamic armies as well. But something really unusual happened in the year 1917. The Jews they did not have a homeland. The nation of Israel did not exist. But in 1917, the British ran out of gunpowder, and there was a Jewish chemist that invented a substitute for the gunpowder that the British used that helped them win the war. Now, in 1917, the leaders in England began to ask this man, is there something we can do for you personally because you helped us win the war? And he said, I want there to be a decree made that my people, the Jewish people, can have a homeland back in their original land, which at that time, of course, was Palestine. As I said earlier, there was no nation of Israel. So Lord Balfour signed the Balfour Declaration in 1917. And also what is interesting is in December the 11th, 1917, the British General Edmund Allenby overtook the Turkish armies and captured the city of Jerusalem. So three things happened. The British took over Palestine. The British took over the city of Jerusalem from the Turks. And of course, they took over Palestine from the Turks as well in 1917. And then, not only that, but we began to see where they had a declaration saying that the Jews could return back to Palestine. Now, sometimes a prophecy can have a dual application. And I'll give you an example. In the New Testament, when Jesus went down to Egypt and came back as an infant, the writer says that it might be fulfilled, spoken by the prophet, out of Egypt I've called my son. When you read the actual prophecy from the Old Testament, he's referring to Israel when they were called out of Egypt in the time of Pharaoh. But yet the writer applies that to Jesus, the Son of God, going down to Egypt, being protected and coming out of Egypt, which he did. Sometimes a prophecy can have a dual application, and this could be one of them. There's a literal fulfillment to the 1,335 days when the Lord Messiah returns to the city of Jerusalem to begin rebuilding the temple. However, look at the 1,335 years based on the Islamic calendar. If you began in 622 and you come to the year 1917, it was the year 1,335 on the Islamic calendar. Years ago in the Voice of Evangelism magazine, I published a chart where I showed a coin that was minted in 1917 with the Arabic numerals that are used for their years underneath, and it is a coin that shows the year 1,335 or 1917. What is interesting about 1917 is the British took Palestine and Jerusalem, and in 1948 it was the British mandate that ended that allowed the Jewish people to reform the nation of Israel in 1948. And once again, this is not the way you necessarily interpret all prophecy that's related to numbers, but there certainly is evidence that there at times can be days that are transferred back into the years as far as the numbers are concerned, and there is some applications that can apply to those time frames. And we've taught that over the years, and some of it is very, very interesting. So I just want to tell you that in the time that we're living in, we're in major prophetic cycles. I do believe we're in the time of the end. And what we do, we must do quickly. We must keep our eyes and mind focused on the things of the Lord. We have written a brand new book, a prophetic book called The Visions. Now, it's more than just visions. We have a whole section on survival in the end time and some practical things to do. We have a section on the 2024 election possibilities. We also have a section on the present administration and the meaning of the name of the president, and so some things of this nature that you might find very interesting. You can order it at perrystone.org, and there will be an advertisement coming up right after this to show you how to do it. It's important that you subscribe to our channel and to give us a thumbs up if you have learned something, because we intend in these many messages to continue to teach you the things of the Lord. Do not forget to go to perrystone.org for just a load of resource information, books, tapes, audios, teaching, and DVDs that are available, and even downloads that are available that you can purchase to help us keep the Manifest telecast on the air and continue our ministry going globally, worldwide, reaching people with these great messages. Thank you for your time. Watch this that's coming up. My new book titled The Visions contains specific details of visions and revelations involving future, both national and international events, from visions and encounters that I have recorded in my private journal. I've waited for the right prophetic season to disclose these warnings and events. God's word states that if spiritual watchmen do not warn the people of the danger they see coming, the watchmen will be held accountable for what happens to the people. After experiencing much inner conviction in my soul, I sensed it was the right time to pen what I and others have seen. Much of this book covers warning visions explaining what is coming and how to prepare. I've divided the visions into what was, what is, and what is to come. Here are some of the subjects I will cover in the book. Learn the 4 different types of spiritual visions. I explain ancient oracles exposing how leaders attempted to see the future. Visions of cities burning, both present and future, including New York City. My father's vision of a planned East Coast nuclear attack. Also, my recent visions concerning cremation ovens. I experienced a vision of a frightening assault on a public school that I want to share with you. I have for many years experienced tsunami visions, and I've decided to release that information and include the locations that I have seen in those visions. There is a vision of a nuclear power plant that initiates a stock market crash. There's a vision of empty cities and empty streets that I believe is linked to the recent pandemic and possibly another pandemic coming. The vision of the 10-mile radius bioweapons attack on London, England. And also, I've seen in 3 different visions a strong earthquake impacting the Midwest, especially the St. Louis area. I also talk about the strange vision of 3 tornadoes that I believe cost Hillary Clinton her political future. I share a vision revealing future attacks on individual Christians and churches. I also talk about when political leaders and their administrations lose divine favor with God. I have a section where I talk about 2024 and beyond, and I've included what I believe to be an interesting historical parallel about a possible Trump second term. The coming revival through the lens of a camera. One of my favorite chapters that's going to be very helpful to you is this: 10 rules and wisdom principles for surviving and thriving at the end. The book also has important instructions for the reader to follow. When you order this new book, I'm also including my 2 audio CD teaching, The Battle of the Two Marks, which exposes the future mark of the beast and explains the mystery of the seal of God, both which are alluded to in the book of Revelation. Get the new book and the audio CD now for your donation of $35 or more. Ask for offer VS 141. You can order at perrystone.org or by calling toll-free 1-888-21-BREAD or mail your order to Perry Stone, P.O. Box 3595, Cleveland, Tennessee 37320. I hope every prophetic student, intercessor, and those interested to know what is ahead will take time to order this new spiritual resource. I've written this in the fear of the Lord, but I believe it's now the time to release the messages. A remnant is now waking up and preparing. What about you?
If you enjoyed this YouTube content, there's an important website you should know about: perrystone.org. Perrystone.org is an essential resource for the latest books, audiovisual presentations, and digital products from Perry Stone Ministries. Resources that cover the same kinds of topics discussed in the program you just watched. Stop in and see all that's available at perrystone.org.